I want to thank the representatives that came today. I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your Valentine with us. I know it's Valentine's Day. But I wanted to go ahead and introduce, and so I wanted to start with Gail Adcock, District 41 representative.
You gotta work in the dark and you come home in the dark.
And then Lindsay Mahaffey, who is one of our school board members. And then Allison Dahl, District 11. Cindy Bash, District 37. And Julie Von Hagen, District 36. They have the distinction of being Moms Man Action Gun Sense candidates, all of them. So today I want to introduce three lovely women to you. My daughter, Leah Krevat, Emily Hitesman, and Lily Levin. They're all high school students, and they have dedicated a lot of time and energy to this movement, and they're very passionate. They're young and they're passionate, and I think that's just beautiful. They're part of two different groups, YWAG Walks and Students Demand Action. Leah just started a Students Demand Action Club at her high school, Apex High School, and so we're getting that off the ground as fast as we can. Actually, Lily and Leah were in Greensboro last summer for the March for Our Lives Road to Change rally, and they actually were privileged enough to meet some of the Parkland students while they were there, and they got even more motivated, and I think all three are just completely motivated. They've inspired me to fight harder. They are our voices for the next generation. So without further ado, Leah, Emily, Lily, why don't you guys introduce yourselves again, just real fast.
I'm Leah Krevat, and I am the Western Rank Student Leader for Students Demand Action. And I've been part of Students Demand Action for a year now. Yeah. And it's been a long, crazy fight, but I've had a lot of fun doing it, and can't wait for this year.
Yeah, I'm Emily Hitesman, and I am a student at Apex High School, and I'm kind of new to this whole thing because I, of course, knew about the Parkland incident, and I knew I wanted to take action somehow. I wanted to do something. I had to join something and join some cause. So I'm really glad I'm here in front of all you guys today, and there are some really important people here today, and I'm just really glad we're able to share our ideas and thoughts. So, thank you.
Hey, I'm Lily. I'm a senior in high school. I'm involved in a lot of multi-issue advocacy, ranging from like environmental justice to reproductive rights to gun reform, and I'm so excited to be here today. I am a part of YWAG Walks. We held the rally on the anniversary of Columbine last year. We are not really an existing entity anymore. However, we have kind of pursued actions on our own, and I'm really excited to share this space with you and go over our ideas and why we're all here.
Okay, so I'm gonna sort of moderate questions and then we'll answer. So the first thing though is a few statistics that we thought we'd run by real fast. So that's one read one.
Yeah, well, I recently learned that gun violence claims 96 lives every day on the average day in the U.S.
More than 2 million American kids live in homes with unsecured guns.
And then 7 children and teens are killed with guns in the U.S. on an average day. And I would like to add that gun violence disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities, especially in inner cities. So a large amount of these kids are disenfranchised, and we never really learn their story.
So the first question is, when did you join a group to help fight against gun violence, and why?
Well, I'll start. So I joined Students Demand Action on February 22nd, 2018 after the Parkland shooting. I felt so helpless. I didn't know what to do with myself if I didn't do anything. I asked my mom, what can I do? And she took me to my first town hall meeting. And it was a really cool experience. But I just kept thinking kids my age were dying, and I was not okay with that. And so, yeah, February 14th was the day that I just woke up and realized I needed to do something because I just can't sit around and do nothing. And I wanted to be that beacon of light at the end of this dark tunnel.
Yeah, I joined this club about 3 months ago out of support from a friend, and she was constantly telling me all these things about the events that were happening, and she was really active, and I felt like I needed to be part of that too. And I think it's a really good opportunity for us to discuss, debate, and remember all the subjects that the SBA Students in Action stands for. The social issues, the violence that takes place, we need to be able to have a voice and take action upon those things.
Yeah, so I think along with you two, I began active in gun violence reform after the Parkland shooting. I remember kind of getting the news update on my phone and then scrolling through Twitter and watching a video where I could hear the gunshots and the screaming in the background, and I was really upset by the video, and I thought, wow, like, I'm upset by the video and I'm seeing this through a digital screen. How does it feel for the people who are in that room who are screaming? And I couldn't stop thinking about it that night. I remember just like laying in bed. I was like, I have to do something. I guess it's I would say it's both a benefit and a flaw of mine that I take action in everything and anything, and I'm really quick to jump to the chase. So I was like, I'm gonna start a gun violence action group, and we're gonna rally across Wake County. And my friends were like, all right, Lily, like, slow down. We need to talk about this first. Like, I get it. Like, I get that you're really passionate about like that all this stuff, but we need to build relationships and talk about it first. So I was privileged enough to know a student at my school who was involved with some students in Green Hope, and they were connected with this group that was forming called Why Wake Walks, and they added me to the group meet. And at first we were kind of like just an eclectic mix of students who were getting together at houses and trying to figure out like what exactly we wanted to do to confront this crisis. It was a bit disorganized because we were new to it. That was really like, I had been in Triangle People Power, which is my group before, but I wasn't super experienced in like actually coordinating events. And so I was like, what do I do? We were all kind of jumping over everything, but I think we learned a lot from it. I built a lot of relationships, and it's really an emotionally driven work, and I wouldn't want anything else.
So what are your thoughts about the rise of gun violence in schools in America?
For me, I just think it should not happen. It shouldn't be a thing. We go to school to learn and not die. Haven't we had enough school shootings already? This should have been fixed a really long time ago. When Columbine happened, when Sandy Hook happened, and all the school shootings happened. In 2018, 30 people died in school from gun violence. 50 people were injured, and there was a school shooting about every 45 days. That is unacceptable. It sucks that we had to live in this generation of school shootings. It sucks that we had to live with this fear. It sucks that this is our new normal.
Yeah, and it also is horrible that it's not a new thing. Like this problem has been going on for a long time, and we need to just take some action upon it now. It's just unacceptable in the schools. There's no control over these problems. Like as we said today, that this is a problem that needs to have legal action taken upon it. Needs to just be spread awareness. We've become a very divided nation, I think, on this subject. So we need to make sure that we come together, spread awareness, talk to the right people, form relationships, and just all together come together on this subject to make sure we take action.
So I had the privilege of actually bringing the shirt. I went to the Student Gun Violence Summit in Washington, D.C. in October. And that was like a group of like about 50 or 100 students from across the country, a few from each state, who came together and to make a Students' Bill of Rights. And a lot of people there were survivors because they specifically asked the question, like, are you a survivor? And I think that the group who was coordinating it made sure that they were picking a pretty good amount of survivors. And so I think the most like life-changing part of that was hearing the stories of so many different survivors who had survived school shootings and who were scared to walk home from school because of the gun violence in their communities, and who felt that their stories weren't heard. I know like Two of my really good friends from the summit were involved in a school shooting that claimed the lives of 2 people, but the school shooting was never publicized on the news because they lived in rural Kentucky and it was kind of just disregarded. Their community was completely overlooked. And so I would say, like, personally, I go to a school where, I go to a small independent school, so I don't necessarily feel that I have to fear for my own safety every day, and that is a privilege that I have and that I sometimes take for granted and that I really shouldn't. And I can even begin to imagine what it's like to go to a learning setting and just know that you aren't safe, like that schools have become militarized due to like both the school to prison pipeline and then the increase of guns in schools and school shootings and people fearing and just this lack of trust that we see in communities. So it's claiming our American education system. It's definitely an epidemic, and if we don't do something about it now, like the next generation of youth is going to have to live with the same fear and perhaps even worse.
Yeah, and as we were saying, I sometimes feel like my school is kind of built like a prison. It's built with one entrance and one exit. You need to make sure that whatever you carry with you has to be a certain size. I mean, it's just, you have to, it's kind of militarized, this ideal of these guns. They're just around and there's no protection on them, and we as students shouldn't feel vulnerable in our classrooms.
So we know your thoughts, but we want to know your feelings. I think the representatives would like to know exactly how you feel about these issues.
Okay, well, I am angry, I'm scared every day, and it's just horrific. I'm not okay with growing up in this generation. I don't want the future generation feeling the fear that I do. This is not okay. I am determined to continue this crusade. I've already had 2 scares at my school, and I am sick of being afraid to go to school. And one of the scares we had was just last month, January 10th. So I was in my second period classroom, and I was in physical science, and my mom is texting me saying, "Are you okay? There's like a gun threat at your school." And I was like, "Wait, slow down, what?" I didn't understand what was going on because I never thought it happened to us. And she was like, "There's some kid in student services or the front office with a gun, like someone brought a gun to school." And immediately I start turning red, my heart is racing so fast, I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know if I should have told my teacher, I didn't know if he knew what to do. And my friends were like, "Leah, are you okay? What's going on?" I was like, I don't know, my mom said there's a threat at the school and someone's here with a gun, and I'm like, and they were like freaking out as I was, but I was probably more freaking out because I'm in this gun violence fight. And so I'm still texting my mom, and she's like, "Wait, it's just a rumor," because she had just called the police and she called the school, and it was a rumor, but I didn't care it was a rumor, because I was just terrified. I didn't want to be there for the rest of the day. I kept begging her to come get me. And so once the bell rang to go to lunch, I was just like, I don't want to go in these hallways, so I basically ran to where I normally sit during lunch, and I was just glad that nothing happened, but it was just really scary for me.
Yeah, I was there that day when that rumor happened, and you start to question. My friends were sitting next to me, and they were talking about how they actually knew this kid who started the threat. He was talking about it in their group chat, and there's a kid that somebody knows personally who's actually not taking this fight seriously and trying to spread rumors like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with this kid? And of course your heart starts to get starts beating a little faster, and you're just wondering, could this actually happen? Could this happen at my school? You never really think it's gonna happen until it does. So you have to be aware of that.
And our second scare actually just happened yesterday. I didn't go to school at all because it was so terrifying. So what happened was that we got a robocall at 6:30 in the morning while I was still getting ready for school, and the principal had said that some person wrote on a bathroom stall saying, "I'm gonna shoot up the school," and had the number 13. And they had known for a week, and they were thinking, "Oh my gosh, it's February 13th. And so they called out a robocall, like, while people were going to school on the buses. So parents, like, might or may not have been able to pick up their child from school because of it. But for me, I was just getting ready. I was braiding my hair, getting ready for school, being like, okay, whatever, it's school day. And then I hear my parents talking about something. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so I open my door to listen, and my mom comes out of her room, and she can't even talk. She is just crying her eyes out. And so I'm like freaking out already because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And so I followed my mom into her room, and my dad told me what happened, and I just burst into tears. I was scared, I was angry, and I was sad. I couldn't even, like, there's no way to, like, react to it. It was just the most scary thing ever to learn. And so my mom was like, you're not going to school, I'm keeping you home, you can go back to bed. But I couldn't go back to bed after that, so I just stayed awake for the rest of the day. And I was just scared the rest of the day.
You feel a little bit manipulated because he has sent out the message as people were getting on the buses and going to school. So you're like, well, if he wants us to have a productive day of learning without anybody like scaring and dipping out and not going to school, he really obviously wanted everybody to come to school and act like it was a normal day, and it wasn't. So what if something had happened? Would a productive day of teaching really be worth the lives of those students? The injury, the panic, I mean, there's no word for it. I felt very angry that day. So I went to school, so I'm so sorry. I was there at school that day.
Yeah. But they actually, the robocall actually said that they had more of a police presence on campus that day. So I said, well, if they have more police on campus, then they must think it's a credible threat. I'm not sending my daughter to school when there might be a threat, and parents are livid right now, so we're still working out what happened. We don't, because according to the WRL news article, they weren't gonna tell us. The only reason they told us was because some parent asked on the police page was something going on, and they didn't want like all these rumors to start, so that's why they made the robocall at 6:35 a.m. in the morning when kids were already on their way to school.
And may I add, I texted my friends during the day, and they said that they didn't see any like more police than there normally is at our school. Like there's only 2 SROs, but they only saw 1, and they didn't see any more, and that just made me like, say, okay, that's not good. They probably lied about it, So we still have no idea. I wasn't there that day, so I don't know what exactly happened.
It was a normal day, and that's the sad part, because you go to school, what if something had happened, and we would have all been just sitting in our classrooms thinking that we're having a productive teaching day. So I have mixed feelings about it. And also, another thing that I wanted to add was that initial shooting day, the threat day, January 10th, later that day, the fire alarm had gone off. And it was not supposed to happen because fire drills, they happen later in the month, so we were all very confused, like, why is this happening right now? So apparently they were doing maintenance or something, so I heard the fire alarm go off. I was a little bit confused, and we were all kind of slowly making our way out the door. The teacher was kind of like saying, you have to leave, it might be a fire drill. Nobody was injured, everything was fine, thank goodness. But we all came inside, and the principal came over the intercom, and he said, whenever the fire alarm sounds, you have to leave the building. And I really do not know how to feel about that, because like the fire alarm was what led to the tragedy. When everybody was leaving, and we're very vulnerable when we're all leaving, and there's statistically more of a threat for a shooting now than there is for a school fire.
So I was in my 4th period class. I was in art, and I was kind of like in the back of the classroom doing something, and I don't even know what I was doing. I don't remember what I was doing now. But I heard the fire alarm go off, and it scared me so bad that I was just like, my first instinct was grab my phone, grab my jacket, and get out, because I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, I don't want anything to happen to me. I just want to get out. So, but as I was like going to my seat, people are just standing up, but no one is getting outside, and I grabbed my stuff, and I looked at my teacher, and she's like, just go. So I opened the door, held it open for a couple of people, and I just ran, because I was just like, this is scary, I'm not dealing with this. And so then I texted my mom, like, we're having a fire drill, and it's not supposed to happen, like, right now, and it usually happens, like Emily said, later in the month. So we were out there for like 10, 15 minutes, and it was pretty long to me, just because I was like waiting. And once we went back inside, I was glad everything was okay, but when the principal came on the intercom saying you have to leave when the fire alarm goes off, it's like, well, really? What if something happens? Yeah. So it's like, what if something happens? It's just ridiculous. And I was so glad to come home, because I just, like, when I saw my mom and my brother, I just totally like, what's happening to them, because I didn't know about
my generation has to deal with, in part because it is a compounding of all of the other issues, right? Like, someone can shoot up a synagogue or shoot up a mosque because they are full of hate, and that is an intersection between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and gun violence. And all of these issues that we face in our society can be compounded through gun violence, our mental health crisis. And so I guess like a few months ago, you all know about the synagogue shooting. That hit a little bit close to home because the old rabbi of my synagogue was actually one of the rabbis at the synagogue that was affected by the shooting. And so we had the vigil at my synagogue, and it was and yeah, it was a pretty emotional time. But I think that in essence, like, it kind of made my community realize like the real and tangible threat of anti-Semitism in the United States. It was gun violence, but it was also like we understood how much hatred there was. So I think gun violence in the US there's so many factors that contribute to it. Yes, it is violence, but it is also so much hatred, and it is also the people who carry out these crimes are so incredibly like polarized, and they don't understand it, and they kind of want to infringe on other people's rights. And so I think it's definitely a very traumatic issue for a lot of people. And I can see it in my friends and my peers and survivors and people who aren't survivors, who are allies. And it's an incredibly hard topic to, I think, talk about without getting emotional about it, which is why we've made so much progress, I think. But also, like, we need to get to the point where we, like, 3/4 of our population isn't traumatized by some form of gun violence, because we all know someone who's been affected. We all do, and that is such a problem. Gun violence is an epidemic.
Yeah, and as you were saying, the people who are filled with such hatred, they're able to just go out and get a military weapon. Like, that's unacceptable. There's no regulations. Like, anybody could just show up with an assault rifle and be able to kill somebody. I mean, assault rifles and guns kill people. Like, it's just the fact. And I feel places like this, the Moms in Action, Students in Action, these are the places to have the hard conversations. These are the places for us to get together and discuss these things with peace and
This isn't hard. Downtown's hard.
being together in our hearts.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, the very last question, what are your action plans for this year?
Well, for me, I'm going to continue my Students Demand Action Club at school. I'm going to try to get more students to join, especially with all the votes that we've had this year. I feel like people are going to want to talk about it and how they feel. And I'm going to try to schedule some speakers for my club. I'm also going to try to get my principal to participate in the National Say Something Week, which was started by the Sandy Hook Promise. It runs from February 25th to March 1st. I'm going to participate in more marches and rallies. I'm going to get more involved with my local political group, which is the Apex Dems. And I'm going to pre-register to vote, and I'm going to urge my friends to do the same. I'm going to write my representatives, both locally and nationally. And we need that H.R. 8 bill passed in Washington. And locally, we need the Extreme Risk Protection Order, which is the ERPO bill passed. March 24th, I'm attending the Students Demand Action Summit at UNC Chapel Hill. I hope to learn a lot of new things, and I want to get more involved with other students in my area.
Yeah, my main thing is to spread awareness. I need to just tell my friends about this. We need to just make sure that we all know something, at least a little bit, about what this group stands for and what we are fighting for and what we need to get done, which is common sense gun regulations. I kind of have a concluding statement, but I would like Lily to say the
So I guess I would consider this a shameless self-promo, and I'm sorry, but I'm, like I said earlier, I'm involved in a lot of multi-issue advocacy. I'm on the steering committee for the U.S. climate strikes. I don't know if y'all know what it is. A bunch of youth are striking throughout the nation for a clean climate and for the Green New Deal on March 15th. It's kind of, in essence, it's a lot like the Parkland shooting walkouts. We're kind of staging it like that. There are different state leads, and we're trying to make this nationally known as well. Additionally, my group, Triangle People Power, we are a multi-issue advocacy group based on the ACLU's grassroots agenda. So we are trying to do an Activism Summit and just a youth engagement summit to make activism more accessible to low-income people of color and to youth who want to get started in general, because it can be a really, really scary thing sometimes to stand up and fight. Like, I have the privilege of saying what I believe in and then going home and going to bed and eating a nice dinner, but some people, this is literally a fight for their rights, and so we need to acknowledge that. I am also the diversity president at my school, and so as a diversity president at a primarily white institution, I feel that it's my job to make sure I'm surrounded by voices that are different than mine and people who have different perspectives to bring to the table. And I think this directly relates to like the whole safety thing. There are some students at my school who feel that their voices are not really representative, especially when they're in the extreme minority. So a part of my job is to make sure I'm amplifying those voices and I'm standing with other students. In terms of the gun violence debate, one of my friends is actually starting a March for Our Lives Carry chapter, and I'm going to be there to support her. She's amazing. I feel like she's going to do an amazing job. And yeah, I'm just super excited about what this next year will entail, and yeah, I'm just so glad to be able to share that with you.
We're really just hoping to see a lot of progress this year, and I really am hoping to just involve myself more and make sure that we become like a power, a front, a family, rising up against gun violence. And guns should not be the symbol of America. Like, we should not, you see the statistics, like America, that we should not be symbolized by something as powerful as death. And I really need these clubs and these groups, and I just need us to be together as one against these problems.
We can't keep having this fear. We need this to end. We need this epidemic to not be an epidemic. Like Emily said, guns are not the symbol of America. We should all be diverse and loved, and we shouldn't be afraid of being out in our communities or in our schools. We should just have normal lives where we can just go to school and have a normal life and not have to do all this. But unfortunately, that's our new generation.
Mm-hmm. We should never be afraid of going into school and not coming back out.
How many days until you turn 18 and register to vote?
Yeah. Already registered, right?
You can
Not
register
yet.
at 17.
You will be registered. Yeah. And I will definitely register to vote when I turn 18. I will be 18 next year in October, so that'll be very exciting. So I'll be able to vote in the presidential.
Well, this lady just corrected me. It's at 17 now.
You can pre-register, but you can't actually go submit a ballot until you're 18, but you can get ready to do it.
And I would add that you can be 17 to vote in the primaries if you will
Right.
be 18. That's general election.
Right.
Which you will be.
Well, one, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your activism. I'm inspired. I was not like you in high school, so thank you for standing here in front of all of us and being vulnerable. Second of all, I want to volunteer to come to your students' demand action meeting and speak. I want to hear from students at your high school about these feelings and hear from more students. And I'm sure some of my fellow representatives will do that too. Third, my main question is I went and met with some students a couple weeks ago at a middle school, and they talked about the fact that sometimes when they get patted down or go through metal detectors when they go to school, it actually makes them feel safer, because they know that then nobody inside that school has a gun or has something that can harm them. And so I heard you guys talk a little bit about, you don't want your schools to be fortresses or feel like they're jails, and I think as legislators, and we hear a lot about that. And just today I sat in on a meeting, the governor's office came and gave a report about their crime commission, their school safety crime commission. They did a whole study on what their recommendations are for making our schools safer. And one of them was basically making our schools more like fortresses and putting a school resource officer into every school in North Carolina. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and if that would make you feel safer or would make you feel like it is a jail and it's not a warm environment where you want to go to school every day.
Well, of course, we still have fellow students. I mean, we're all, that is a difficult question to answer because everybody has different perspectives. Like, I personally, if I got patted down every morning, I would feel a little bit wary, like, what if they found something? I don't know. Just, because middle school students, they're younger, and I came from a middle school that was very open, and you could walk outside every time you switch classes. So the switch to the green level campus is very big for me. And so I can see how middle school students nowadays, the schools are becoming kind of all like that now. They're kind of making a big switch, and I mean, if it makes students feel safer, I mean, it definitely is taking some precautions to prevent things like that from happening, but it depends on really how you personally feel about it.
I think, okay, so at the summit, we were talking about this a lot, and I kind of went into the summit with a feeling that, like, we should not have SROs, we should not have metal detectors, we shouldn't have, like, anything that makes a school feel like a fortress, and I came out with a little bit more of a nuanced perspective. I think in an ideal world, that would not be the case, and that would not happen, but I think that unfortunately, sometimes precautions like that are needed, however awful they may make students of color feel, especially with SROs. So I think in terms of like SROs and that topic, I know Wildwake Walks, we suggested that every SRO go through racial bias training, especially because these SROs have a pretty large, like they have a great amount of power, and it's really important to exercise that power wisely. In terms of like metal detectors and like bulletproof glass and anything that makes your school feel like a fortress, I mean, I feel like we only have a limited amount of money and resources, and like putting it towards bulletproof glass isn't really ideal or necessary. I know that a lot of students who were voicing their opinions at the summit who came from communities where violence was much more prevalent talked about how they would feel safer with a metal detector, even though that they were for like common sense gun control policies. So I think it really varies school by school and person by person. I still would state the opinion that like in my ideal world, none of this would exist, but we unfortunately do not live in the ideal world. So I think that we should not be investing like heavily in metal detectors and school resource officers and any other thing that makes our school more militarized. However, like there are precautions that probably should be taken. That being said, our legislation should not go towards that nearly as much as it should go towards common sense gun reform and gun control laws, and making sure that we don't making sure that we aren't, also because I know that another thing that's kind of come up in this debate is that when someone is perceived as a threat, their privacy is being breached, and it's kind of like their records are looked into, and these people are also usually people who look like threats, and that can be racial bias as well. So it's like, where do the lines of like privacy and keeping our schools safe intersect? How do we best navigate that? I think it's something that is really, really difficult, and like this gun debate is also super difficult, especially in America. And it's not something that can be solved by a conversation, and there's so many emotions involved. And there are pros and cons to having SROs. And but I think that yes, if we have these precautions, we need to make sure that the racial like bias effects are mitigated as much as possible. So that way we do not have students of color feeling unsafe going to school. And we do not feel like our schools are prisons, because that is not conducive to a learning environment, to students going to college, to an American education system in general.
SROs do personally make me feel safer in school, but as you were saying about the funding, yeah, like a lot of my classrooms don't have enough computers to sustain all the students. We don't have enough textbooks. We don't have paper textbooks anymore because they're not putting money into updating the curriculum, and I take kind of a little bit of offense to that, because they're talking about spending all this money on arming and training teachers, and that's another thing I want to talk about too, because you know, I love having a textbook to read. I know how weird that sounds, but I really appreciate having the paper resources. Yeah, we're with you. Yeah. And we don't, even if you want to switch over to electronic learning, we don't have enough computers. So it's just, they're putting all the money in the wrong place, and it's fun to address that. Yes?
Have you met your school psychologist?
No.
Do you know if you have a school psychologist?
No.
I don't know of any I mean, I know that like
Probably.
counselors, but.
They go to the
There's
counselors, they don't
psychologists.
really have psychologists.
But they're split between schools, there's not enough,
I think this is an important one.
Did you hear that? Did you hear this answer?
There are school psychologists that are employed by Wayne County Public Schools. They're not paid nearly enough. And they are split between schools. So, there might be one per middle school and one per high school, but that is not enough. I mean, if you look at the recommended ratios, I mean, one Wayne County High School is to one psychologist is not enough, and they're split between elementary schools, so one for every 2 elementary schools.
And I would add that if you're looking at gun violence holistically, we also have to look at suicide, and 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide. And the fact that like kids are killing themselves at high rates and it's spiking is partially due to the fact that like we don't feel like we have anyone to turn to. I know a lot of students feel like they don't have anyone in their schools to support them. It's SROs who are there to enforce the rules, and maybe the student-teacher relationship is a little bit, there's a kind of a divide. So we need to invest more in school psychologists. We need to address this mental health crisis because they go hand in hand. When we eliminate guns, the suicides go way down because guns are, while someone might try to kill themselves, they would not have nearly as high of a chance of succeeding. And they would be able to kind of go into rehabilitation. And so that is also something we need to confront and invest in our school psychologists. Honestly, like what's needed in this debate is compassion. I feel like there's no compassion. And like, we just need to, like, we need to have heart. And that's super cheesy, but honestly, like, we need to invest in learning mechanisms that are going to help students, not hinder them. And investing in communities that we feel like are, that we feel like inner city communities that with a high proportion of violence and gun deaths that are really just militarized and completely affected by the system and are broken and have, it's honestly this cycle of perpetuity of poverty and race inequity. So yeah, what's needed is compassion, and there are policies driven by compassion as well.
So Julie, I do want to answer your question real quick. So we do have 2 SROs at our school, and it makes me feel okay about it. Like there's still like that fear in the back of our heads, even though our school resource officers are really amazing. They're really great. But I feel like, metal detectors for our school and like being patted down every morning, that just wouldn't feel very comfortable with me. Like I'm just very, like, I don't know, like I just would feel not okay about it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about this, but I guess I do have mixed reactions to it. But, Anyone?
Any questions? I think I have a comment. I'm just thinking about the question of the fire drill and like not feeling safe doing the thing that you're supposed to do that is a safety issue.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I have a little bit of sympathy on the school side. Like, schools are not able to do what we all accept as a norm. Like, we all did fire drills, we have always done fire drills. And that is something that is a basic school activity that the school does to keep its students safe. And the fact that there's now a question mark on that basic thing, I feel like this, all of the Band-Aids are coming on and they're confusing everything when the source of the problem, it's not in the school and it's not in, it's, the source, there's just never gonna be enough Band-Aids, and it's, you guys are faced with decisions that, like, what do? Do you obey the rule? And I'm thinking like of a school administrator and how, like, what do I do to keep my students safe? do I make that robocall or do I not make that, you know, like,
Yeah.
do we inform or not, you know, it's like, when the cause of the root of the problem is not at the school.
Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
Actually, when Sandy Hook incident happened, that time something came in my mind. I don't know if I can share it here or not, but yeah, I don't know if it's practical or feasible. But what I was thinking, in school for the safety issue, I noticed they have built so many cottages outside the school. It's not safe at all. It's anytime you can go and you can enter in those cottages.
So they used to have cottages at Apex High, but they've torn down Apex High and the kids are in Green Level High School right now. They're not building cottages or anything, it's actually closed now.
Right, Greenhope High School has so many, Greenhope
Yeah.
High School has so many cottages.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but there is a PTA, so many volunteers are there working. If they also create something that as a parent volunteer, every day, one parent as a volunteer go outside as a security, work as a security. I don't know it's good idea or not. Because they have a volunteer working for teacher, for making copy, that I used to do it,
Yeah.
going school. I don't get money, I am just doing volunteer.
What would you suggest the volunteer do?
Just do outside security, just,
So
Well, that's the thing, is we wouldn't be trained.
Yeah.
I think Lindsay
That-
would have an answer.
With
I
all the
mean-
students going in and out of Greenhope High School, I teach them, and the side doors are open because you have to have access to the cottages. If a
right, but during the school time,
But a
one
parent
person.
volunteer, or if there were a shooter, what could we possibly do?
We'd get shot.
No, that is true, no, but as a security person, just how the security person has been gone, but he's not like psycho person. Same way, because if that person is not there, not security person, then that incident happened and somebody is getting that, victim.
Are you saying we should have, like,
We
that we should have a weapon when we're outside?
No, not
Okay,
weapon,
because
I'm not saying weapon, no, kind of,
Yeah, or just
not weapon,
just
but
somebody to
maybe
look out
just,
for,
if anybody is going in, that door is always open. So
yeah.
at least they can check with the metal detector and just
Okay.
how the, airport test.
The number of students going in and out, I just.
No, not for the students, but
Lindsay, did
for
you
the
have?
other visitors.
Right, well, the visitors
At
are supposed to go through the front door.
I'm sorry,
It's a complicated issue.
I was gonna let our school board member.
Lindsay, do you have a comment?
We are
Yeah.
required, to have one SRO for every high school per state statute. That money that we have to fund SROs is about $35,000 a year for one SRO at one high school. So state mandate is high school only. Any SROs that you see at a high school beyond, $35,000 is not going to pay for an SRO. So we rely on an MOU, memorandum of understanding with our municipalities and the sheriff's office in Wake, to talk about, training, because it's a very different role than being a beat cop. And I will say a lot of this comes down to funding. And that's the sad part. And I grew up in the ideal time where, when I was in third grade, we had our last air raid drill. And when I was a junior in high school, Columbine happened, and I remember that Mayberry time. There was a lot more acne back then, but I think we've seen in school policy, we went from zero tolerance to, we have to watch out for the kids, we have to, make sure that the kids aren't doing anything wrong. We're now seeing a movement, slowly but surely, within school systems, more towards restorative practices, that need for counselors, the need for, but it comes down to one thing, we're dancing around the issue because it all comes down to taking guns out of the hands of the people that use them. I mean, you see the AR-15s that are being used, and for me, I don't understand why when you thought after Sandy Hook would happen and all this, that this would have,
Why
and
they're still out
I'm
there.
just
Why are they still out there?
dumbfounded by this, and for me, it was a feeling of numbness, and the adults will fix this. Well, I'm the adult now. And so, yeah.
Everybody's affected.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock, so we need to wrap up. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming, especially our representative. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I just want to make sure that you guys are hearing me and my friends and understanding that we have this fear every day, and we just want you guys to understand that you guys need to do something about it.
And I also wanted to say all the representatives here that I know of are women, and that shows. In 2018 midterms, we got a lot of women into office, really strong women, and we are going to continue. We can't give up. So we're going to change that percentage. We're going to turn it around.
Thank you very much.